There's nothing quite like the outdoors, and my passions become spending as much time as I can in these wild places. Through my adventures, I've learned quite a bit over the years, and I've tried and tested tons of gear and equipment. So today we're going to be talking about camping gear and the core items that I bring on every camping trip. There's plenty of great gear out there, and everyone's got their own personal preference, but this is what works for me. So if I've got your attention, let's talk gear. Hey everybody, and welcome back. Today we're talking about camping gear. I've wanted to do this video for some time, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over all the core items that I have to go camping with me on just a weekend adventure. Now my truck is all loaded up as if I was going camping with the boys for the weekend. Now when I go camping with my family of 4, sometimes things will look a little bit different. The way me and my wife like to camp is different. We were brought up camping a little bit differently, and she likes a lot more of some of the bigger tent and the creature comforts and some of that kind of stuff. So as we go down the line and we talk about each one of these items, I'll explain what would be differently if I was going camping with my family, just so you have full transparency of, you know, maybe you'll see it like this in one video and maybe like this in another. It really just depends on the kind of weekend that we're going on. Now this video is going to be geared towards beginners, someone who's just getting into it for the first time, and you're trying to decide what camping gear you want to buy or to bring. And so I'm hoping that this video really helps you out. Now it's also great for those who have been following along on our adventures for a little while and just really want to see the core camping gear items that I choose to use every time that I go out and explore the outdoors. So without further delay, let's get to it. So first up, we've got our Kelty 4-person tent. Now right now, if I was going with the family, this is what I'd bring, as long as I could twist my wife's arm just a little bit hard enough to get her to agree with it. Now, if you didn't see the video of when we went to Anza Borrego, we had a monster Coleman 6-person tent. The thing was gigantic. It was the bane of my existence. It actually broke on that camping trip due to the high winds, and I couldn't be happier. Hallelujah, that thing is gone. But, you know, my wife likes the extra room and all the extra space. And when we're going camping at like a campground or staying at like a national park or something like that, that's not really a big problem. Tents like that tend to be a little bit more work. They're harder to set up. They're harder to take down. They're harder to clean up. They take up a ton of room in the back of your truck. And so as much as I can stay away from, you know, equipment like that, I do. However, you got to find the balance. And, you know, my wife doesn't love this the same way I do. She will go camping. She was raised camping. They just did it a little bit differently. So I try to accommodate those needs and desires and make sure she has her creature comforts. For right now, this little Kelty 4-person tent is great. But this is just your traditional 4-person tent. I used to be a general manager at Sport Chalet, and this is very similar to the tents that we'd run out to our customers. So honestly, it's great. I've had this thing for years. It's got 2 poles, plus you do rain flight. Maybe I'll go into greater depth if you guys really want to know about the tent, but it's just your traditional 4-person tent. A couple poles, stick it into the ground. You got this thing set up in, I don't know, 5 minutes max. Really not a lot of work. Weighs practically nothing. So really a good tent. Now sometimes when I go by myself, I will bring this tent like in the winter if we're going somewhere really cold and I want to bring like maybe a space heater or something like that with me, so I can sleep on one side of the tent, have the space heater pointed maybe towards me on the other side of the tent. It just depends on the conditions if it's really cold. But if not, this makes a great tent for 2 adults. We got 2 babies, so a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, and the 4 of us would fit fine in this. And so once again, this would be my first choice at the moment. But you know, you definitely got to make sure that if your family maybe doesn't quite like this as much as you do, it is important to pay attention to you know, everybody else's needs. Everybody wants to have a great time. And when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, if bringing a bigger tent is going to make my wife happy, I'm going to do it because I want her to have a great time out there, and I want us to make this a consistent thing in our family's life. So the next one would be this Marmot Limelight 2-person tent. Now this is the older model. I've actually had this thing, for a very long time. If you've watched some of our previous videos and adventures, you've probably seen this thing pop up a time or two. If I'm not going camping in the winter and I'm just out with the guys, this thing is perfect. It's just big enough. I like some extra space as well, but I think it's the perfect size for one person. This thing has 2 poles, actually 3 poles, but I can set this thing up in under 2 minutes. It's super small, super lightweight. I think with the rainfly and everything, it maybe weighs 5 pounds. And so this Marmot, let's see if you guys can see it. Marmot Limelight 2-person tent, great buy. It's a little pricey. I think I got it through a pro deal when I used to work for Sport Chalet, as I mentioned earlier, as a general manager. I was able to order it from Marmot, and they gave me quite a big discount to get it, and so I took advantage of that. But really a great tent. Now, I will link to some alternative tents, maybe some Amazon tents, some stuff that's at a lower price point for some of you guys that are just getting into it for the very first time, that would be comparable to these two. So don't worry if you've got a budget that you're working with and you can't really quite afford to go with a name brand tent like Marmot or North Face or REI or whatnot. There's plenty of budget tents on the market. I'll link some in the description below for you guys to check out. But having a good tent is very important, but it's something that I feel like you don't have to overthink too much, especially if you're going in spring or summer months when it's going to be pretty warm. I'd say always bring the rain fly. That's something that I typically, unless we're talking about there is a 0% chance of rain, I'm usually setting up the rain fly, or maybe it's a new moon and the stars are just incredible and I want to lay in bed looking up at the stars. This has got one of those screens so I can just lay in my tent and look up at the stars. On certain nights when it's warm enough, that's great. But any other conditions, always bring that rain fly with you. In a tent like this, it is super easy to put on, but you really don't want to get your sleeping bag or sleeping mat wet or pillow or clothes, whatever else you have in the tent. You want to keep that stuff dry. So that is the 2 tent options that I use. Next up is my sleeping mat. So this is the Exped Megamat 10. Now, once again, if you guys have more questions about any of these items, let me know in the comments below. If there's a lot of interest in a certain specific item, I have no problem doing a dedicated video for that specific item. This is just supposed to, be a broad overview for people that are looking to get into some of this gear. So, sleeping systems are tough, and for some people it can be somewhat of a sensitive topic when you talk about camping sleeping systems, because I can tell you, over the past couple decades with camping as much as I did, I have tried so many different sleeping systems, and I typically am a terrible sleeper. And so kind of where I'm at, I'm going out, I'm having an adventure, I'm having a great time, I'm not expecting to get the greatest night's sleep. That's just how it is for me. That's not the case for everybody. If you end up with a really good sleeping system and you're a pretty decent sleeper, not a light one like me, you can get a great night's rest, and that makes a huge difference when you're out exploring the outdoors and trying to enjoy that time out with your family and friends. And getting a good night's rest is really important. So this is so far the best option that I have had. I've tried air mattresses, I've tried backpacking mats, I've tried egg carton mats, I've tried air mattresses, and what this is, basically it's like a mix in between an air mat, but it also has a memory foam component to it. And so I will, like I said, I will link this down in the description below. Check this item out. It has a super high air retention rating. I've never had this leak air on me in the middle of the night at all. What I typically do is pump it up all the way. It comes with one of those little handheld or stomp air pads to fill up the mat. And then I lay on it and I let out just enough so I've got a little bit of movement. You can have this thing as soft or as hard as you want, and it's not gonna leak any air. So it's great. This thing has been honestly life-changing for me when it comes to getting a good night's rest in the outdoors. Like I mentioned, I've definitely struggled with it in the past, and this thing has come through for me in a lot of great ways. So next up, let's talk sleeping bag. Another really important component to getting a good night's rest is not being too hot or not being too cold when you're sleeping. Now, most of the places that I like to go camping are high elevation, and so it doesn't really matter what time of year I go, it's gonna be pretty chilly. So this would not be an appropriate sleeping bag for the winter time, but maybe fall, probably spring, definitely summer. This is a great bag. So this is a Teton 20-degree sleeping bag, flannel lined sleeping bag. And I think it's like the large or extra large version. Now, there's plenty of great sleeping bag options out there. There's down, there's synthetic down. There is Coleman's, just typical whatever Coleman is. You know, I don't know, I'm not a sleeping bag scientist, but I've also tried, like I've tried mini sleep systems in the past, I've tried mini sleeping bags. And for me, since I'm typically camping in a truck, I've got a lot of room. As you can see, I've got plenty of room. And so sleeping bag is something that I kind of was like, you know what, I don't mind buying a bigger sleeping bag. I think, this is just a personal preference of mine, I think the flannel is by far the most comfortable. I grew up sleeping with a flannel sleeping bag, and I just remember that kind of like nostalgic getting into your tent at night and getting into that cozy warm sleeping bag. And you know, when I was a kid, we had flannel sleeping bags, and so I tried down sleeping bags, I tried synthetic down sleeping bags, and they just never were comfortable enough for me. If I'm going on a trip where I need to be a little bit more lightweight, like a backpacking trip or something like that, I'm gonna have to give this up. But as long as I'm camping with my truck, this is a fantastic sleeping bag. Now, what I do wish, even though I think this is the large or extra large version, I'm a little bit of a bigger guy, and I wish that this was a little bit bigger. Something I can't stand about sleeping bags is just kind of feeling like you're restricted inside your sleeping bag at night. Some people it doesn't bother, others can relate to me. Whatever your preference is, just know if you're kind of a bigger guy like me, there's gonna be a little bit of that in this sleeping bag. And so if that's a real big problem for you, make sure you get a bigger size or another version. But the build of this sleeping bag is great. Once again, I will link this down below so you guys can check this out on your own. All right, so now let's talk camp tables. Now I've got another video covering this camp table. This is the Mountain Summit Gear roll top table. This thing has been great for me, and so I now bring this every time I go out. I think it's a really good surface for food prep, obviously, but sometimes when you're out, maybe in dispersed camping sites that don't have, you know, designated tables or whatnot, sometimes it's just great to have that surface. As you saw, it folds down nice and small into this tiny little bag here, and so it doesn't take up a lot of space. Even if I'm going with camping with the guys, I'm gonna bring this thing. Next up, let's talk about a cooler. So I am not a fridge guy. Not that I don't want to be a fridge guy, they're just very expensive, and I've had this Coleman steel belt cooler for quite some time now. It's worked out great for me. Now, the bummer things with coolers is obviously ice is an issue. Typically, if I'm going out for a weekend and I fill this thing to the brim, plenty of ice, maybe a block of ice, this thing does great for a weekend. But anything more than a weekend, you're gonna need to refill the ice. And so that definitely creates some problems when you're trying to get off in remote destinations. That's when a fridge can come in really handy. I just don't have one yet. Hopefully one day I will, but for right now, this thing is working great. They're like 70, 80 bucks, something like that. And so you can get a really great deal on something like this. And even for my family of 4, we are able to bring, at least for a weekend trip, everything that we need in this. Sometimes we got to be a little bit smart the way we pack, but there's plenty of room inside this cooler. So next up, let's talk about bringing along some water. Now, especially when you're getting out into some remote destinations, this is typically what I use to bring, not my drinking water, but my utility water. So maybe cleaning some dishes, maybe if the family's with me and we're gonna be gone for a couple days, there's enough water in here for me to take a quick shower with a little shower system that I bring sometime. I actually don't have that with me, so maybe we'll cover that in another video. But these things work great. These are made by Scepter. It's a 20-liter, 5-gallon water canister, and so this thing is good. It honestly, I mean, 5 gallons is quite a bit when you're talking about, at least for a weekend trip, doing some just utility type things with it. I have a second one at home, and I have brought in that on some longer trips, but I've never used both of them. And so I don't really know if having 2 is necessary. It kind of depends on your water consumption, and everybody's a little bit differently, but if you're using this stuff sparingly, then you should be fine. So 20 liters, 5 gallons, made by Scepter, links in the description. Pretty good. Obviously, as you can see, just the way it's built, it doesn't take up a lot of space, and so I like that quite a bit. Next up, let's talk camp chairs. So this is the Front Runner expander chair, and you can buy these on Amazon. Once again, I'll link those in the description, and these things are awesome. They fit inside my deck drawer system, and so even when I'm not going camping, I always have these with me. And they just, I love them because though they're a little heavy, they're very durable. They pack down super nice and small, and they're just so convenient. They got a little carrying handle, and the way you open them up is like so. And then typically I would use my foot to do this, but just so you guys can see it, I'm gonna push down on this, lift these guys up, put the seat back, whoop, and there you go. And so they're just super easy to set up, super easy to pack down. They've got little cup holders, I don't know, put some other things in there. Yeah, they're not like your typical director's chair where you got like a side table and stuff, but we've owned those in the past, and the reason why these are so much better, to me, in my opinion, is they save so much space. And so that just is a really big deal to us, and so obviously that's why we're happy to choose these guys. And so I think they work great, pack up nice and easy. A little bit hard to do it on this elevation, but there you go. And that's that. So nice and easy. Really, really great camping chair. Next up, light. So I have 2 of these Goal Zero lanterns, and I just recently started using these versus like a big propane lantern, which I really love the big propane lanterns. I love the light. I like the light that they put out. I kind of like the sound that they make. The old school propane lanterns are my favorite, but they take up a lot of room, and as you can see, this is such a tiny footprint. Plus, these are obviously renewable. I can plug this in. I've got a little USB connection in the back of my snug top here, so I can plug these in during the day, recharge them. They actually have a USB input, so if it still has some power on it at night, I can bring it to bed with me and charge my phone if I want, or just kind of whatever else. But overall, this is the Goal Zero Core Lighthouse. Now, I have 2 of them, and so far they've worked great for me. On REI's website and on Amazon, I will link below. There's quite a few reviews of, I guess after a while, them having a problem and some kind of power problem. I haven't noticed it yet, and so obviously if I did, I'd be sharing that with you guys. I did read the reviews ahead of time, but they looked like they would be perfect for us, so I'm like, I'm gonna try it. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't work. I always have, extra flashlights with me and stuff, and so it's really not going to be the end of the world if one of them fails, because I've got 2 of them. And so that's lighting for us. If I didn't mention it before, I keep all of my camping gear, so like camp stove, utensils, all that kind of stuff in my deck drawer system. Once again, there's another video on that I've already done, so if you're interested to see how my storage situation looks, go ahead and check out that video. There's a lot of, you don't have to have a drawer system to have a good storage setup. You can have just a simple bin system. In fact, that's what I've used for years. It's just 2 bins, one for, camp cooking stuff, and the other for, like a mallet, camp axe, hatchet, all the kind of utilitarian type things I would keep in that other bin. And so that works out really well for me, has worked out really well for me in the past, and this works out really well for me in the present. Okay, so I apologize if the lighting got a little dark. The sun has kind of ducked behind our hill, so I did adjust the exposure. I hope you guys can see everything I was talking about a second ago. Okay, and so let's continue on. Now we are at our camp kitchen stuff, and so this is obviously it's really important to be able to prepare a meal and stuff. And so for me, as the theme that you're kind of seeing, small, compact, lightweight, I don't want things to get in my way, and so I've kind of minimized all my camping gear and kitchen gear down to this stuff right here. And so first off, let's talk about a camp stove. Now, I mean, there's so many good 2-burner camp stoves out there. There are things like the Scuttle, which I just think is a little bit too expensive for my needs. But this Camp Chef Everest 2-burner stove is phenomenal. I think it's 20,000 BTUs. If it's not, I'll let you know. If I think that's what it is. It burns so much stronger than any camp stove that I've had in the past. And they all work, they all get the job done, but sometimes when you're at some higher elevations, you can be waiting and waiting and waiting for your food to cook or for water to boil. And this thing gets the job done. It's got a little ignition push to start igniter, and then it's you attach one of those 1-pound green propane tanks to it, and so that works really well. Now, as far as what do I cook with, sometimes when I'm going, like I said, sometimes it's different when I'm going to the family. So when I'm going with the family, we do cook a little bit more extravagant. We have some fun with our cooking, and I'll usually bring 2 cast iron skillets. One of them's big, but set up for just me and the guys. This is how my deck drawer system's always set up with. I've got a cast iron skillet, a 1 pot. Actually, there's 2. These are like little backpacking pots. So there's another smaller one that fits inside of here, which I think is awesome. And so I've got the cast iron skillet, 2 pots, a tea kettle. I've got a set of plates, and I've got for 4. I bring all 4 just because it doesn't like it. It's not like it takes up any more room to bring all 4 than just the 1. So that's what I do for plates. I've got this just little, I can kind of get these things wherever, a little Tupperware canister that's got the knives, forks, spoons, all that kind of stuff. We've got just your classic blue enamel. A bunch of different brands make it. Coleman, GSI Outdoors. There's so many options when it comes to your camp kitchen setup. So you can do stuff like this. Sometimes, I do like to bring dishes that we use and wash, because I do like trying to have that conservationist aspect when we go camping. But in full transparency, there have been times where we go and, if it's just we get back to camp too late or whatnot, we'll have some paper plates with us, some paper bowls, and sometimes it's just quicker to do that. And so I feel like there's not really any shame in doing it. So I like to try and use the dishes as much as possible, but sometimes I give in, and that's my weakness. So in full transparency with that. Now, I think I've shown you guys these before, but this is a GSI Outdoors knife set. I bust this out when I'm doing a little bit more of some fancy cooking, dicing up some meat, some veggies, whatnot. This thing comes with a microfiber cloth, a cutting board, 3 really good, really sharp knives. And so I always have this with me. And to do the dishes, I always keep this little Dawn soap just right in here. These are some collapsible dishwashing bins. So normally I only need to really use one if I'm by myself. They don't take that much space, so I always got both with me. But you know, when there's a bigger group, more dishes to do, use both of them. Works out great. And then some metal Zach glasses, and then I always got my Yeti coffee mug, which can serve for coffee in the morning, whiskey in the evening. These things are great. And so I think that covers all of the cooking gear. I do have, obviously, I didn't bring them out, but I've just got some spatulas, some of those tongs that I use for when I'm, like, you know, cooking up meat. Maybe if we got a campfire going and we're grilling over the campfire, that stuff comes in handy as well. But this is kind of like my minimalistic camping setup for the kitchen, and it works really well whether I'm out overlanding, whether I'm out camping for a couple days at a campground. Pretty much everything that you see here can, you know, get a basic weekend done, get the job done on a basic weekend for me when I'm, you know, just with the guys and we're not doing anything too extravagant. So that's that. All right, the last thing to cover are these rugged tool bags. And so you always end up with all that miscellaneous kind of camping stuff that you need. So whether it be a lighter, spices, cooking spray, all that kind of stuff. So I have that all in this little zippable canvas bag. And this is made by Rugged Tools. And so then I also have a couple more of these things. And so like this one has got a bunch of like Lucy lanterns, which we use to light up our tent at night. Various flashlights and charging cables, headlamps. And so these things are really great as well. I have like 6 of these things, and it just helps keep all the miscellaneous type of camping equipment that like you kind of have to have that stuff. It keeps it really well organized. And so I really, really like those. And so that kind of wraps up all of what my core camping equipment is. If you're just getting started, I hope this helped you out, gave you kind of some directions of what to look in, to bring. You don't have to buy all this stuff. You can rent it from REI. At least some of it you can rent from REI, probably like a cooking stove and whatnot, maybe sleeping bags, probably a tent. So some of that stuff that you can rent, some of it you can borrow from somebody if you're really getting into this for the first time. If you are looking to purchase any of the stuff that I showed you, please use the links that I am going to include in the video description. It helps put some gas in my tank. I get a small percentage of the purchase if you do use one of the codes that I've attached in this video. And so if you'd use those codes, I would greatly appreciate it. Once again, I hope you like this video. If you have any more questions, please let me know in the comment below. I would be happy to talk to you about any of this gear a little bit further in depth. So with that being said, thanks for watching. I hope to see you guys out there, and we'll catch you in the next video. Bye now.